ride with me to the other clans and we will defeat the sky people.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello out there in podcast land and YouTube land. Welcome. You have arrived at Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror movies and science fiction films and those key elements that lift them above the average genre fare. Are you new to us? Well, we would like to welcome you. Climb on board. All the cool kids do. Come on.
Get on the short bus. Come on.
We'll try not. You know what? I won't make you smoke.
No.
I don't know what I'm saying here. We would like to welcome you new folks out there to our strange and deep, in-depth analysis of some of these peculiar films that tend to stay in our minds and, may potentially stay in yours as well. If you're new to us, that's what we're all about. If you're coming back, well, welcome back. You already know, you've probably been listening to us for a while and are used to our shenanigans. My name is Tim. I am here with my good friend and co-host, David Horton. David Horton, how are you?
I am well. I am stressed. There's too much going on. There's lots of stuff. I didn't have a lot of time to prep and do that. So my genre week, normally we start with, with our genre week and what we've been doing in genre world. Well, I was inspired by our particular film today, so I went and watched another film that was influenced by this film, and a key from this movie I went and watched again because, we're going to delve today, and I hate to jump to it, I don't want to, but we're going to delve today in a subgenre of science fiction that I really like. As all of our listeners know from when I was touting the virtues of Deadly Mantis, to which you were not loving a lot, Yeah, but anyway, so
the mantis, it sounds like Godzilla.
Yes. So I went, which I love anyway. So I went on and watched my other favorite of this genre, which we'll talk about in keys when we get to, but it's lovingly referred to as Tarantula.
Oh my God. I haven't seen that in forever.
I love that movie. They eschew stop animation and instead actually take a real tarantula and superimpose it on the desert or on the building or whatever, except they did make a head with the big fangs and the 8 eyes and everything that could go down and bite people, and they made some great gigantic fangs that come in and can tear up a whole room, and break through the ceiling and everything. It's really cool. Anyway, I loved it, and I loved seeing the similarities of how influential the movie we're going to eventually talk about today was and what it did. It was very interesting. So that was my genre. I don't want to give too much away because we'll talk about it in the actual podcast itself, but I got into bug-eyed monster movies. So that's what I did.
Awesome.
Yeah. What about you? Where'd you go? What'd you do?
Well, as usual, I found myself down the corridor of the Shudder channel or Shudder platform, I guess I should say. And I watched, and you're going to love this, I watched a movie called The Innocents.
The Innocents.
And it is not the 1961 movie with Deborah Kerr, directed by Jack Clayton, that we discussed on the podcast earlier this season.
Right.
This is a new Norwegian film. And it is a foreign film that totally took me by surprise because, oh man, I don't even know. I got to get into it somehow and explain this without giving away too much. First of all, it's directed by Eskil Vogt, who did a movie called Thelma that I think I talked about in a genre week years ago because it came out back in 2017. He's a very, very slow burn director. So this guy is not for everyone if you're looking for fast-paced horror. And add on top of it that it's subtitled because it's Norwegian, that makes it even slower for some, I'm sure. And Thelma was that way. He has a bit of an obsession with, I want to say superheroes, because the movies that I've seen, Thelma and this one, feature kids with powers.
Okay.
Or maybe not necessarily superheroes so much, but kind of like Carrie, or, telekinetic powers, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thelma was about a girl in college that came into her powers. This is about a group of 4 kids.
Okay.
At least 3 of them have unusual telekinetic type powers, and one of them is autistic and completely kind of in her own world.
Mm-hmm.
The picture of the girl behind me is her sister, and she's the one that really doesn't have powers, or maybe she comes into them late. I can't remember. You don't see her exhibit them that much.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie, I was questioning whether it was a horror movie. I'm like, why is this on Shudder? I don't understand where the horror is. Then really horrible things started happening that I almost had to turn it off. I almost couldn't finish it.
Really?
Yeah, because in the beginning, this girl is tormenting her sister who is autistic. She does things like pinches her, or she puts glass in her shoe.
Man.
And I'm like, this is some cruel shit. Then some cruelty to animals starts happening by one of the other kids. And that's when I almost turned it off. I was like, I can't handle this. But fortunately, I didn't turn it off. I went through it, and the payoff was worth it. It's a slow burn. You realize that this little girl is not really the enemy, and her sister is like a hero, the autistic girl, and there's another girl in it that's great, and there's this little boy that is just fucking evil. and it's just, I don't know how to describe it other than I loved it. But if you're looking for something fast paced in the horror world, you are not going to like this movie. I see if I have anything else. No, other than that it reminded me a bit of the Swedish director Thomas Alfredson that directed Let the Right One In, that movie we covered first season, or I think it was first season, maybe second. And if you want to catch this one, I highly recommend it for people that enjoy slow burn horror. It is on Shudder.
Interesting. I think I remember seeing it, or when I was looking up Innocence for the podcast, I actually came across the trailer or something for it, because that poster looks very familiar to me.
The poster is a great poster. It's like a swing set upside down, and a girl hanging from it.
Yeah, very unique. So I thought that was interesting, and it reminded me of like Let the Right One In kind of feel to it, just in the poster.
Exactly what I would describe it as. Only not vampires.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
And I would probably, now that I've seen this, consider this for the podcast.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty intense in places. It's like you're like just going, oh my God, don't let this happen. That kind of thing.
Yeah, if you had to turn it off and then went back to it, that'd be interesting. So yeah. Well, in a sort of way, our subject of the podcast today was intense at the time when it came out, and became extremely influential. We are going back to 1954 and the very beginning of what a lot of people have called the BIM movement, or the bug-eyed monster movement. The giant monster movement, some people have called it in science fiction and horror, so to speak, with a classic called Them! Exclamation point. For those of you who haven't watched this, we do spoil everything. So go watch it, hit pause right now, go watch it and come back. It'll only take 90 minutes of your time, and you'll be well deserved to do it. It's great. It started this entire movement, literally, really. I mean, it was very influential at the time. It was very popular at the time, which is great. It had a hugely troubled production period. But we'll get into that.
When you say it's the first, did you go back and try to see if there was anything before 1954? Because I did not.
There was not. This is, historically, the year before this, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms came out, the Ray Harryhausen one, which was the giant dinosaur that basically, gets into the city, they end up shooting it, and its blood is toxic and all that. It's a very unique story. Great Harryhausen work. Those of you who are podcast followers of Johnny know that Tim and I both love Ray Harryhausen and his work. This one, they eschewed Harryhausen. They did not use that, mostly because it had a hugely, like I said, troubled production thing. But yeah, this was the beginning of the bug-eyed monster movie, and it was so popular it greenlit every single creature you could think of turning into a movie.
Well,
all the way up to like the 80s, when we were talking about, or the 70s with frogs. I mean, come on.
Right. Well, nature gone chaotic or whatever. Yeah,
nature gone mad.
But these have an even more unique place in the subgenre, in that these are usually caused by radioactivity because of the atomic bomb having been dropped the previous decade, I guess it was, or testings too.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, a brief synopsis, just for those of you who haven't known, we're talking about giant ants. Giant ants.
And not uncles.
But the way it's, and this is just directly from IMDb, I took this particular one. So in the New Mexico desert, Police Sergeant Ben Peterson and his partner find a child wandering in the desert, and soon they discover that giant ants are attacking the locals. FBI agent Robert Graham teams up with Ben and the support of Dr. Harold Medford and his daughter, Dr. Patricia, quote, Pat Medford. They destroy the colony of ants in the middle of the desert. Dr. Harold Medford explains that the atomic testing in 1945 developed the dangerous mutant ants. But they also discover that 2 queen ants have flown away to Los Angeles, and they want to be movie stars. We don't know. Anyway, they've flown away to Los Angeles and are starting a huge colony in the underground flood control tunnels of the city. When a woman reports that her 2 children are missing, the team begins searching for them. Will they arrive in time to save the children and destroy the colony?
I figured they flew to LA because they were in the desert and that was the closest city, maybe.
Well, they were following the westerly winds, yes, is what it was, supposedly.
And looking
that's
for something that would warrant food or something. I don't know.
Historically, when did you see this? Do you remember when you first saw this movie?
I have no idea. I'm fairly certain I saw it as a kid, maybe one afternoon or one evening on some kind of shock theater thing. But I actually went back and watched this movie again last year because around October, I'm always looking at Turner Classic Movies to see what they're running. And they were running this one last year. So I got to revisit it and had forgotten how great it is and how many great people are in it. I mean, there's a lot of good people in this movie, even in small parts. So it's a fun ride.
I can't remember either. I mean, I'm sure I saw it on Shock Theater. I guarantee I did, actually. But I have probably seen this movie 24 times. I love this movie. I like it mostly because it's a perfect storm. Like you said, it's got a great cast. It's got a strong script that doesn't rely on its core thing, which is a giant monster. Instead, it's almost like a murder mystery at the beginning.
Yeah, and you don't see the creatures for a long time.
Right. And because it has such good acting and good script, we kind of forgive the fact that A, doesn't make a lot of logical sense that we're going to have giant ants. B, giant ants would not move near as slow as these freaking puppets do. I mean, they would be on you in like seconds and rip you to pieces kind of thing. But they did have a really cool giant ant model kind of thing, puppet.
They burned a lot of them too. I was like, how much expense did this movie go to build those things and then burn them? Yes.
But nice storytelling, good plot, great music. It just works all the way through. It's very tightly scripted. I think except for the kind of pseudo-political stuff in the middle when we get into I have to convince the military and the generals, and so I'm the scientist and I have to show you a 5-minute video on ants kind of thing. But that was needed to kind of explain what was happening and why they moved locations kind of deal.
Yeah, if I had one, well, first of all, I was going to say exactly what you said. It's unlike the Deadly Mantis. When the monsters are not on screen, this movie is still interesting. There's still stuff going on with good actors. But the one thing that I I did think logic wise was completely crazy and totally Hollywood is that what's his name? James Whitmore and James Arness, play the local cop from New Mexico and the FBI guy from DC, but all of a sudden they're always the ones there in charge, no matter where they're at. I'm like, why is this LA? I mean, why is this local New Mexico policeman in charge of this national thing?
Oh yeah, I've got it. And they kind of try to mask that by saying we're trying to keep it so under wraps. We're not telling anybody, and only those who already know. We know. But yeah, I've got it in my notes. Okay, this state trooper dude has a lot of pull. I mean, he is everywhere. He fires bazookas. He fires flamethrowers. I mean, don't they have trained people for this?
Well, James Arness is an FBI guy, and all of a sudden he's in an army helmet and like uniform fatigues when they're like going underground to kill these ants. Oh my God, this is great. But I still love it.
Obviously a lot of sharing of authority in this particular one, because they are,
I am in charge of the military, and I want to put this state trooper in the lead on this expedition or whatever. Yeah, it's crazy.
This movie did have a troubled creation process. Like I said, it was a rough production thing. It was actually even almost literally given away. Warner Brothers originally started it. They said they would support the movie, but they kind of thought, maybe not. Jack Warner actually offered it to 20th Century Fox and said, hey, you want this? We got some kind of bug movie. You want it? Kind of thing. And then suddenly all the returns came from Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which was very popular. Okay. So Warner Brothers immediately pulled it back and said, no, we'll do it. Yeah, well, I guess we'll do it. And we're going to do it in 3D because that was the cutting technology, and we're going to do it in color. So we'll be even better than the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Both of those decisions changed 2 days before they shot. 2 days before cameras roll, they suddenly said, oh, no, you're not going to use color anymore. We're going to do it in black and white, and it's not going to be in 3D. So that's why there are still some shots in it that were designed for the 3D that they didn't have time to go back and fix. So like flamethrowers shooting directly at the camera and things flying directly at you kind of thing, the helicopters and everything else, that was meant for a 3D effect that they never got to do because of budget, basically. Because basically Warner said, can we do this on the cheap, really cheap kind of thing? But obviously they spent money on it because, like you said, they made these huge life-size, more than life-size, I guess. Yeah. Puppets, and burned a lot of them, sort of thing. So yeah, there was that. I love the design and I love those still images you have behind you. I just wish they articulated better and moved better. They kind of, as they're coming after you.
It's honestly, and this is a key. I mean, they're very Japanese Godzilla type movie monster.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not in a costume per se, but their movement is the same. It's awkward. Like you said, ants would be much faster.
Yeah. Agreed.
But I looked up Gordon Douglas, and I didn't find much else that he did. He was like a TV guy or something, if I'm not mistaken. He's the director of this movie. And then I looked. The screenplay was written by Ted Sherman. The adaptation was Russell S. Hughes from a story, and the story is the only guy that has cred. His name was George Worthington Yates, and he also did Earth versus the Flying Saucers, and it came from outer space. So that's where the sci-fi tie-in comes in, with the guy that came up with the story, even though he didn't write the screenplay.
Yeah, he did Amazing Colossal Man. He did a lot of the 50s sci-fis. He was a good taught screenwriter and did all that. Sherman was the initial inception and the producer and everything else. And he was actually bumped from the project at one point and then brought back, kind of thing. And Gordon Douglas was always going to be the director of it. And he had some input into the script as well, but not a lot. But it's a very tight script. I love the fact that they treat it almost like a crime procedural at the beginning. Even down to, the old cliche of I'm going to take the pencil and I'm going to stick it in the barrel of the gun and look down and see how many shots were fired and then place it right. I mean, it's very Dragnet kind of feel to it.
Very
you
much
know?
so, especially with two state patrolmen always, in a car out there.
Right.
Yeah.
And always talking to each other and, with all the radio jargon, they even take the time later on in the helicopter to say, you have to say over, he goes, but why am I saying over? The doctor kind of thing.
Mr. Gwenn.
Yeah. But it's treated almost like a mystery to begin with, and then suddenly now we go into the creation, and it's that scene you've got pictured behind you when you finally first see the alien, I want to say alien, the ant, but that's not until like 29 minutes into the movie.
It is a ways in there. Yeah. And we normally talk about scenes, and that's the well, it's not the first scene that comes to mind, but that is one scene that comes to mind when Pat is out wandering in the desert and there's a storm and all the sand is blowing and something is going to happen. And it's not scary by today's standards, but I imagine back in the 50s, that was pretty scary.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was. That's why I said I think this was really influential and scary at the time, not only because of a giant thing, biting you in half or ripping an arm off or whatever, but the nuclear scare, which was still very apparent in the 50s, and the fact that what have we unleashed on the world to win that war kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And we're going to pay for it. This is karma coming back with giant ants eating us for our sugar.
Are there any scenes that stick out to you as well?
All of them.
All of them.
I think the hook is great. I think the teaser is great with the girl wandering in the desert.
Yeah.
And then them coming up upon the trailer and it's been, torn apart and there's one footprint and all that. I thought that was a good scene. Of course, the climax is great with trying to rescue the kids in the water tunnels. Mm-hmm. And I've always remembered, ant is coming, one boy up. Ant is coming, one boy up. Oh my gosh, do I have time? No. Oh, I get bitten in half kind of thing.
Yeah, which is cool. I mean, they kill the lead and you don't expect it. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
they didn't do that
touch.
Back then in the 50s.
Oh no, the hero lives. The hero, luckily we had two heroes in this one.
Right. That's the whole reason. They had to have two so that one could live. You mentioned the little girl wandering in the desert. And of course there's the scene I showed earlier where she screams but the scene that I like with the little girl is when she's in the ambulance and you start hearing that high-pitched tingle and she sits up and is like freaked out and they don't even notice because she's behind them. I love that.
That was a nice little touch. I totally agree with you. That was good. I think most of the Gwenn scene, the Dr. Medford scenes work. I like that.
Well, that's just because he's Santa Claus.
Well, he plays the eccentricity well. He's humorous in places, but he's still authoritative, which I like. And one of the things I do like, it's not really a scene I like, but it's an element I like, is they don't play up the romance crap in this like they do in every single other Bug-Eyed Monster movie. At the beginning, they do, like, he goes, if she's a doctor, I think I'm going to be sick, kind of thing. So that macho kind of, she's a hottie kind of attitude, but they don't play up on that like they did in Deadly Madness, like they do in Tarantula, everything else.
And something else we watched recently, Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, is that? No.
20 million miles
20 million miles to Earth. Yeah. Yeah, that was a really quick romance between the two. Yeah.
You're hilarious. The scientist and I'm the other doctor, so we have to get together, right? Yeah. So yeah, but I think so many scenes in this are memorable that work. I mean, I love the whole montage of Army going into the tunnels in the darkness with the flashlights kind of thing. I love that. That was just a cool thing.
And finding like a nest of eggs and stuff. I mean, really creepy shit, that was later done in movies, like Alien, where it's really scary. Mm-hmm. But I mean, just think of what this would have been in the 50s. I would have still think this would be really scary in the 50s.
Oh yeah, and I remember this taught me things like brood. I didn't know that term when I first saw this movie when I was a kid, and so I had to look it up. And the way ants work. I mean, I had several little ant hills when I was a kid, and this was kind of interesting.
Ant farm.
ant farms, the glass
Yeah.
ones. So you
Mhm.
see the little tunnels, which look just like his map that he
Right.
drew, kind of thing. So yeah, I think there were great scenes. So what about performances? Were there great? I mean, I thought that little girl did an awesome job.
Yeah, she's great.
For like the 3 scenes she's in, she's great.
Yeah, her name was Sandy Descher, and I looked her up. She didn't really do anything else, not hardly.
Well, if they just let her say they come out at night
Mostly,
it would have worked,
That would have been awesome, and then we would have known why James Cameron did it.
Right? Because obviously he was inspired by this.
Yeah. As far as cast, James Whitmore plays Ben Peterson. I love him. I don't know why. I think it's because he was a big 70s television actor. So I'm used to seeing him on TV.
Yeah.
On, he was probably on every show that was big back then, Kojak, Beretta, whatever.
Oh,
Starsky and Hutch.
Westerns too. Big on the Westerns.
Right. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier, Dr. Harold Medford is played by Edmund Gwenn, who was Santa Claus in Miracle on 34th Street. You just don't have the beard, but he still got the Santa vibe going. And I think he's pretty credible.
Mm-hmm.
His daughter is his assistant.
No, it's his daughter.
Is it his daughter too? Okay.
Yeah.
She has a different last name. No, she doesn't. It's Medford. I'm sorry. Pat. And she's played by Joan Weldon. I did not really recognize her. Do you know her from anything?
No, I did not recognize her from anything. She went on to do a lot of Westerns.
Okay.
A lot of Westerns. So
apparently this is a Western cast. Because next up is James Arness himself playing Robert Graham, the FBI man. We know him for the 20 seasons he did Gunsmoke, not to mention it was on for 5 decades if you include, special movies that came out in the 80s and 90s after it went off the air.
Yes.
Of course, we also know James Arness from his sci-fi background. He had only 3 years earlier played the Thing from Another World.
Yep.
And then his brother, I am a fan of, that's Peter Graves, and he starred in that movie I talked about on a podcast several years ago called Where Have All the People Gone?
Yep.
Which was a TV movie that I love, but no one else seems to remember. What is ironic about this is that even though James Arness was in the first movie about giant ants, Peter Graves went on to star in a lot of the bad ones. Like one was called Beginning of the End. Do you remember that movie from 1957?
Yeah, vaguely. Yeah.
And he ended up in a lot of these movies where animals were out of control or nature run amok kind of thing. Who else is in this movie? I'm going to skip through some of these people. I don't know.
There are a couple of great smaller roles.
Oh, absolutely. Alan Crotty is the pilot that lands and is put in an insane asylum because he says he saw giant UFOs that looked like ants. Mm-hmm. And what they are the queens, of course, flying to a new location. And that is played by he is played by Fess Parker.
Yes.
Who went on, of course, to play Davy Crockett for.
And do you know the trivia about that?
I do.
Okay.
Walt Disney went to a taping or a filming session of this film to consider James Arness for the role, and he fell in love with Fess Parker and decided to cast him instead. So that's how we got Davy Crockett.
Because I just recently, I had not seen it probably in 30, 40 years maybe, but I just recently watched Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier because of work and everything. And Fess Parker does a great job in that. It's a very Disney produced movie, but he does a great job. I loved his performance in this. I would love to show this as I'd love to show this to Donald Pleasance and say, this is how you really do it to be memorable kind of thing, because little touches he would add, like, almost scared me out of my pants. And then he suddenly grabs his robe and covers up and goes, sorry, ma'am, to her. And when he's mad, he slams the drawer. The little bits he does in this are awesome. The way it's staged he uses the whole room, walking everywhere. And unlike today where they would want to cut 95 times, they really allow the camera to savor his performance and just kind of move with him, kind of thing, which is great. I thought he did an awesome job. I totally forgotten you were in this, Wes Parker, and you're awesome.
I know. And, I would have pictures of all these extras, but they're such small parts. You can't really find pictures from this film with them in them online because they're only in like one scene.
Yes.
And another one is your friend and who you talked about just a few episodes back, Olin Howland, plays Jensen.
Yeah.
We mentioned that he was the carpetbagger in Gone with the Wind, but he is also the old man that we talked about in The Blob that gets the blob on his hand. And of course, he's the old man that is singing "Make Me a Sergeant." He's kind of a comedic actor, I guess you would say.
Yeah, he's your town drunk kind of feel. In this one, he's the town drunk. He played
Otis.
He played that role a lot in some Westerns and everything. So yeah, he's good at doing that. The eccentric old man role, put it that way, maybe,
we also have, I don't think I put his picture, but I did put a note in here. William Schallert has a bit role in this movie. He is a character actor that you will recognize immediately in a ton of things.
Yep.
I can't remember what it is he plays in this, but he was in Star Trek's The Trouble with Tribble episode.
Well, ironic that you said Star Trek, because
because
Mr. Spock is actually in this movie.
Leonard Nimoy is in this movie too.
So if you are a fan of Star Trek out there and you have not seen this movie, Spock is in this movie. Yeah, Leonard Nimoy is in this movie with a kind of a pseudo Brooklyn, Jersey accent.
He's got like one or two lines that he tells this woman, and that's it.
Basically,
he's an Army staff sergeant who reads a news story off the teletype.
Yeah, basically, in order to to find out where these two queens have gone, they elicit Army intelligence to start monitoring the entire country, but especially the western part of the country, for missing sugar, unexplained disappearances. It's this huge board that's really funny of all of the stuff that they're monitoring on these teletypes.
Right.
And he's the one that finds the connection to the Fess Parker character,
right,
who thought he saw UFOs with wings.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I guess in summation of the cast, you've got a strong leading cast with James Whitmore, Edmund Gwenn, and James Arness. But then you've got 4 cameos from Fess Parker, Olin Howland, Leonard Nimoy, and William Schallert.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so there's a lot of familiar faces in this movie. That's why it makes it fun to watch, even when the monsters aren't on screen.
And your supporting characters, even your lesser one-liner, one-scene characters, still work in this. Nobody's caricatured or over the top or strange about it. You know, the cops, the military personnel, the news people, everybody is a good, strong, solid cast for this. And I don't know if that says a lot about Douglas as the director, but hopefully it does. I mean, because who he cast and how he used them was very good.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people went on to do television. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but there's a television connection there as well. I was going to get to awards. Sorry. I got distracted by something. I was trying to do a quick research job. I thought I forgot. This movie was nominated for awards. I don't think it won any.
No, it pisses me off.
It did win. It did win. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Special Effects.
Yes.
Did not win. It was
nominated. What did win? Do you know what did win? Do you know what did win?
I do. But it wasn't an Academy Award, was it?
No, it lost the Academy Award to 20,000 Leagues.
Oh, sorry.
Under the
My
Sea.
bad. I didn't realize. I thought you were asking me what this movie won. You're saying what beat it?
What beat this movie to the special effects? And this had giant ants, but it lost to a giant squid. I just
no
think
wonder.
that's just,
It was in color.
Well, it's true. It was in color, and it wasn't. And then looking back at it, it wasn't just the squid. It was also the model effects with the submarine and everything else. So, yeah, I could give it to it.
Well,
overall.
and as soon as you said 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it was like ding, 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 1954. So
Yep.
I was like, no wonder, because that movie, I remember that year because we covered that on our podcast.
Yes.
The Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, or the Saturn Awards, also nominated it posthumously, I guess you would say, for a DVD collection. However, in 1955, the Motion Picture Sound Editors awarded it Best Sound Editing for the year. So it won that award from people of, that field, I guess you'd say, sound editing field.
Well, they recorded ants and
they go, I can't make that sound with my mouth.
No, but you'll probably hear
saying.
it now on the podcast.
I do. And that little girl will sit up when she hears it.
She will. And scream.
What I was looking up is that this movie is not on the 1001 movies you must see before you die. I think that is a mistake. That needs, but there are a lot from 1954. So I'm assuming he had to pick and choose wisely.
Maybe, but this one is so influential as far as for this podcast and for our show. This has such keys come out of this. This started this whole trend that is still going on today.
Right.
So,
and though it did not make that list, I would like to point out to you that it did receive 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
And that's a good thing, right?
That is a good thing. Okay. That's based on 57 reviews.
The same agency that says Paddington Bear is the best movie ever.
Yeah, well, Paddington Bear rules.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, not a big fan. Not a big fan. Anything else from my watch notes? Let me just check real quick. I said this was a huge hit when it opened. Of course, had a very strong anti-nuclear message, especially reinforced by the last line. This was really revolutionary for science fiction film, just because there were so many studios that immediately dumped tons of money into stories like this. We want another them. Give us a them kind of thing. And it brought people back out to the movies post-war and everything else, people still getting out and coming back. So that was great about it. It's so interesting how we analyze and look at movies now when we watch them, because in my notes it's got like, ooh, Davy Crockett cameo, that's good. Ooh, I like the ship here. Oh wait, that's 2 Wilhelm screams right in a row. Hey, those kids are in danger, so we gotta get in those tunnels really quick. Oh wait, there's another Wilhelm scream. Wait, there's 4.
Why don't you remind people what a Wilhelm scream is?
I think I will. You'll hear it here, but it's that that you always hear. It's in every Star Wars movie. It's really interesting. Look up Wilhelm scream if you haven't, and it's an audio clip of a particular fall that a stuntman did back, I think, if I remember correctly, back in the late 30s, maybe early 40s. But it became this standard scream of pain that you would do and you would have in all these movies. And then it became this entire trope where people would try to sneak it into movies as an Easter egg of, it's the
exact same recording, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It's the exact same. And it's just, it's so great. There's a great mythology around the Wilhelm scream. But anyway, I have it. So that's in my notes.
Very funny. What else do you have before we move on to keys?
I think that's mostly the bulk of my notage is that. Great cast, great show. I really loved it. I highly recommend this movie.
Me too. And I'm trying to think, I had forgotten to write my keys down. So I was typing them madly while you were talking about Wilhelm screams, because there are so many that will just pop into your head instantly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, I do have in trivia that one of the reasons the effects look so good in this, as far as flamethrowers go, is they are real flamethrowers. They are really using,
and they're really torching those costumes.
And they're really
puppets.
Torching the set and the puppets. Yes, they are really firing those. So they actually had a lot of cooperation with the military and on this movie, so that they could, utilize military helicopters, military planes, the flamethrowers with military personnel, the Jeeps, all of this stuff. So they had a lot of cooperation with the military in filming this, which showed and added to the production value too.
Mhm.
You know, I remember as a kid, that scene with Whitmore when he died is scary. Rescuing the kids, that's a scary scene. And the scene, right, you know, they double tap the scary there because right after it, I'd forgotten that Arness gets trapped at that part. You
With
know,
the
he gets
cave in.
with the cave in, and
Yeah.
they're trying to dig and get to him, and he's trying to shoot off all of these, you know, ants as they're coming. So yeah, it was really cool.
Trying to think of some keys that are not big bug keys. I mean, I've already got a bunch of those as well.
Well, I mean, why don't we start with the obvious ones?
Okay.
I mean, the one that I just mentioned, of course, in my what did you do genre week was Tarantula,
Right.
which was a great one. And then this same decade, they had Black Scorpion.
I don't remember that
which
one
was
at all.
that was a good one. You need to see Black Scorpion.
Okay. I'll take your word for that.
And a ton of other ones that were like, you know, Deadly Mantis, of course.
I put that one. What other 50s big bug? Well, I mean, the first one that comes to my mind is not a bug. It's Godzilla. And it was also 1954. It was
Correct.
just on another part of the world.
And both the creators of Godzilla and the creators of Rodan, which actually had giant bugs in the Rodan one, both have said literally on they're documented as saying that this film was the influence for them to do those movies. So this had a huge influence on that.
Well, there's also a direct tie, though, because they are linking these ants to radioactivity. And
correct.
And Godzilla is radioactive as well. And I mean, I don't know really which came first because they both came out in 1954. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to check right now.
Well, like I said, Godzilla, the director of Godzilla has said that them influenced the making of that movie, the nuclear threat and also the giant monster kind of attitude of it. And, you know, it inspired not only, it kind of morphed. What I love about this is basically the fear of radiation. And then when that didn't work anymore and people kind of started waning, they made it the fear of science or technology. And that's when you get to like The Fly and those kind of things. When science fiction the trope changed to beware of technology because it will, you know, destroy our world kind of thing.
Yeah, I just double checked. They did both come out in 1954. So who knows which come first, the chicken or the egg? Yeah.
The giant lizard or the giant ants.
If it's testing, it would be America. If it was actuality, it would be Japan.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the best way to sum that up.
But there have been decades of bug or nature inspired, as we've talked about. You know, a few of the highlights. There's some that are funny and some that are good. Bug came out just in the late 60s, and that was literally like giant cockroaches that came from, but they weren't atomic. They had been altered by magma or the center of the earth or something like that, radiation.
Yeah, and sometimes they're not giant. Sometimes they're just out of control, like Willard.
Yeah, like Willard, but all of my references I have in my keys are all like bigger, like Skeeter. Remember Skeeter? And it was like they're the size of a Volkswagen kind of mosquitoes thing. And there was another one that I've told you about that I don't think you've watched yet, but called Ticks. And it's like these ticks are like the size of a chihuahua. You know, they will like run up your leg and just latch on and just suck you dry kind of thing.
That's disgusting.
But yeah, but giant ticks. Eight-Legged Freaks, which was they have said that was a huge inspiration for them, even down to they kind of wanted the puppets that they used to be similar looking with the hairy kind of walk.
I never saw that movie.
Yeah.
It's
so Eight-Legged Freaks. Yeah, it is spiders. And there were a ton of spiders too, by the way. 70s gave you a bunch of those spiders and bees, killer bees and spiders kind of thing. But those are more.
Oh, the Swarm was another one.
Yeah, but those are more nature against us movies.
Agreed. You know? You're right. It's not necessarily big creatures. It's just.
Now there was that other one. There was a spider one. I think it was
Kingdom of the Spiders.
Kingdom of the Spiders, and that was a giant,
William Shatner,
a giant spider in that one.
God,
in doing research, it kind of reminded me too. There was one movie, and I remember seeing it It came out, I found out in research in 71. And I remember seeing it. It was called The Hellstrom Chronicle. Do you remember
I
that?
recognize that, but I don't know what it is.
It was hugely popular. It was a TV movie of the week. It was about what would happen. What actually, it was a very frightening documentary about the power of insects and how insects will survive us all, and they will take over the earth eventually because of the hive mind, because of their resilience to all sorts of things, including radiation and all that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it was a mockumentary. It was not real.
Oh,
It was all made up. They used actual documentary footage, but it was actors paid to do to be the scientists and do the interviews and all that, blah, blah, blah. It won the Academy Award for Best Documentary that year, and it was fake. It was a huge kind of Oscar history.
That's hilarious.
There. Yeah,
I don't
they
remember
actually
that.
nominated and then gave it an Academy Award, and it was all fake.
Wow.
I always remembered it because I think the very last shot where the voiceover of the actor scientist is saying, and man will no longer have dominion over the earth or something like that, is showing like one in silhouette, one of those rhinoceros beetles, the ones that have the great big horn.
The horns,
they're huge.
yeah.
They're like freaking 4 inches bug kind of thing, and it's just crawling across this wood real slow, and they're saying it will inherit the earth kind of thing. I was like, okay, cool. What other keys do you have? I've been droning on about giant bugs.
I'm trying to hang on a second. There was one I wanted to look up and I can't find. All right. First of all, I wanted to do ant movies, and maybe you can help me remember this because I can't find it. First of all, Phase 4.
Oh my gosh,
movie.
That's in mine too. Love that movie.
Yeah, that's a science fiction ant movie. Not necessarily big ants, but ants, dominating.
Imagine intelligent ants.
But yes, exactly. But the other one I'm trying to think of was a favorite one of my mother's, and I want to say it's called The Naked Jungle, but it's something about army ants.
Army ants. Oh yeah, they will eat you. They will eat you. Yes, it's Naked Jungle.
Is it The Naked Jungle?
I'm pretty sure it's Naked Jungle because I remember the scene. It is The
Naked Jungle, and it's got Charlton Heston in it, and he's my mother's favorite actor. So that
and the ants eat you. I mean, they're carnivorous in it. They eat people.
Yes,
and they show but they also show the thing that ants really do. Army ants do, where they'll use their own bodies to like build bridges across rivers and
over
things.
rivers and stuff.
They're amazing. It's just that hive mentality and the sacrifice for the hives kind of socialism.
Ironically enough, it came out the very same year, 1954, and it stars Charlton Heston and Eleanor Parker. Only instead of giant science fiction ants, this is about real ants in a jungle eating people
that will eat you. They will eat you.
So that's one we may need to consider.
Ant movies. For ant movies, I have Ant-Man and the Wasp. I just thought of it. I mean, because he
does control large creatures.
He gets on the ants and rides on their backs and things,
true.
and the ants look like these ants. I still like the design of them. Kind of thing.
For sure.
I have this movie is referenced in Ed Wood. They talk about them and the giant ants in Ed Wood. You may not know this, but in Fallout 3, the game, there's a great side mission which is totally based on this movie, on irradiated ants, and you've got to get to their brood and kill the queens. That's part of the mission in the Fallout
3,
Fallout 3 game. Yep. Yeah, it's a great game. It's a good game.
Back to what you said about Ed Wood, I know why they must have referenced this, because there's a really funny scene in Ed Wood where they're I think it's Bela Lugosi. I can't remember. It may be the woman. It's probably the woman is like trying to wrestle with a giant tentacle, and it's obviously not animated, and she's trying to roll around with it to make it look like it's really happening. So that's probably where they referenced giant ants or something.
Yep.
Them.
Yep.
I can't remember the name of that movie. Edmund Wood only did like 3 movies, and it was like it had the beast in the title or something. I can't remember. I have again. I would immediately say Alien and Aliens,
Yes,
because both those
definitely.
films, the creature is kind of based on insect hierarchy, for lack of better words. You
Well,
know,
especially aliens, because
or
we introduced the
society,
queen.
yeah, insect society, high
Yeah.
class insects. I have a ton of those movies that you mentioned that are nature run amok. They're not big bug movies, but that are animal and bug movies.
Hmm.
Food of the Gods was
Oh,
one. That's
yeah.
a classic drive-in movie. I remember seeing it at the Sunset Drive-In. Day of the Animals, Night of the Grizzly. You mentioned Kingdom of the Spiders, Frogs, Squirm, Willard.
Yep. All those.
They all are from the 70s too.
Well, and don't forget another DeForest, I think it was DeForest Kelly, was in Night of the Lepus.
Yeah.
You
Ooh,
know,
I try to forget that one.
giant rabbits. How can you
Yeah.
forget giant rabbits
And
coming for
DeForest
your
Kelly's in it.
big knocking doofus?
Damn you, David. I'm a doctor, not a rabbit
Not a rabbit
enthusiast.
farmer. Yeah, it's interesting you said aliens. That came up like 3 times in my keys.
Yeah.
The nest scene,
Right.
the
Going underground into
flamethrowers,
the tunnels. Mhm.
flamethrowers, the egg chamber, the little girl survivor, like we said at the beginning, sort of thing. I also have Starship Troopers.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because they're arachnids, which are sort of, but the way they had the technology existed, I think this movie would have had attacks like in Starship Troopers, where you're literally piercing people with the claws, and you're ripping people apart or biting them in half and that kind of stuff, which is what the ants do in this.
Yeah.
So.
You mentioned I mentioned Godzilla and you mentioned Rodan, but if you want to get technical, the one that is a real key is Mothra, because it is not a monster. It is a giant moth, and it is born of these gross looking larvae that crawl around beforehand.
And probably were irradiated.
Exactly. They were. So you've got basically the same story, only with a moth. And that moth, like Godzilla, is sometimes good, not bad. Like they usually wake the moth up to defeat Godzilla.
Right.
Bug, squirm, willow, skeeter, ticks. Arachnophobia is another one.
Yes, of course.
If you want to go to back to the 70s, I left out the Swarm.
Yeah, you mentioned Swarm with the killer bees.
Yep. Isn't that Olivia de Havilland?
Oh, yeah. Yep. And watch out, because those bees will build a hive right on your car.
Watch
right
it,
on
Melanie.
your car.
Melanie, look out. The bees are coming.
Oh, Scarlet, the bees, Scarlet. Oh,
I feel faint.
Ashley, keep me away from the bees.
Oh, my God. So that's all I have as far as those types. Do you have any other direct sci-fi keys?
I have two final ones. One's a trope that this inspired, which is that whole, the scientist now has to show us a film to tell us the whole history. That whole gag, because that's in Deadly Mantis, that's in Black Scorpion, it's in Tarantula. Let's observe the creature in its natural habitat so I can tell you how that's been mutated.
And they're sitting around a table with a bunch of people.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like in Deadly Mantis, you loved it because they just have the big spur, the big claw just sitting there. Let's talk about it. Well, this is chitin here, or whatever. And then one that's kind of just a personal key, or a key just for me, which is when they first unleashed the army on Los Angeles, and they are driving through town and everybody's kind of pseudo panicked, and you're hearing the voiceover of the general saying, curfew will be at 6 p.m. Anybody out after that will be under martial law, that sort of thing. So reminded me of Day the Earth Stood Still, my favorite science fiction movie, because when they start hunting him, they're all in those Jeeps with a light in the back of it that we're shining on everything, kind of thing. And it just so reminded me, and I'm not certain if they didn't take footage from it. I honestly, I'd have to look it up, but it looks like in 1961, when they did Day the Earth Stood Still, they may have taken some of this footage and used.
Oh, wow.
So,
interesting.
Yeah. Even though they're in DC in that, but it's some of it just looked almost shot for shot. I was going, I have to do some research on that and see. But it really inspired. It looked like it was a key reference to
Well, if I was going to do a personal key, I would say the X-Files, but they unfortunately, I mean, it's the FBI, they get involved, they're investigating, there's flashlights in tunnels, but unfortunately they don't have, the basement with those special agents that would be in charge of this,
Right.
named Mulder and Scully.
Right.
We're going to New Mexico, Mulder or Scully.
Yeah.
Why? Giant ants.
Giant ants. Really, Mulder? You believe this? I think
It's
it was
clearly
just
fake.
it's clearly a hallucination, mass hysteria.
There's something in the drinking water.
Something.
We should write these things.
It's a conspiracy from the military. Yeah. But yeah, that's all I've got. I mean, I loved this movie. I mean, do you have any last thoughts or thoughts about it? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's classic. Let me ask you this. This is something we did not talk about. What do you think of the title?
I like the fact that it's not, Planet of the Apes. So we're just giving everything. Tarantula.
Giant ants are coming.
Black scorpion. They didn't call it ants because I think it was crucial to that whole first 20 minutes because they do treat it like a murder mystery and we don't know what's happening.
It's a surprise.
Even though the poster, like you have behind you, shows a freaking giant ant on it.
It kind of looks like a monster, though. It doesn't necessarily look like an ant.
Well, because they gave the eye like lizard eyes,
and the antenna are more like tentacles and not.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
or as Dr. Medford says, antennae. Shoot for the antennae with your revolver that I did take in a note. Shot like 16 times. I mean, they're carrying these police special 38s and they're like shooting for like 10 minutes.
This movie's got real heroes in it, though. I mean,
that's
James
right.
Whitmore and James Arness, they're both named James, coincidentally, are running around, and they can, like you said, not only do they wear different uniforms and shoot guns, they shoot bazookas and all kinds of like explosive stuff, flamethrowers. They take cyanide bombs down into the hole. I love the giant hole they find.
Oh yeah, and I was going to say the cyanide grenades. They know all the helicopter lingo and codes. They put on army uniforms. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But awesome. Yeah, it's and again, except for the time that it was, are these creatures CGI? No, nobody even heard of a computer at this point, kind of thing. But they work for the storytelling and the fact that the characters believe it so wholeheartedly in the way they're directed and acted. Mm-hmm. I think it works. So yeah.
Yeah. I would say it's safe to say that we both recommend this movie.
Yes.
If you've not seen it, go out there and get it. Actually, I had to rent it because it's not available right now, but it's usually available. I don't know. Turner Movie Classics alternates their movies daily, I think, by like one or two. So just keep checking Turner. It'll be on there, or you can, who knows, it may pop up on something else. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, this is our last episode before we break for Thanksgiving. And we're going to take a couple weeks off, and we're going to come back, as we always do, with a special Christmas trilogy.
Aww.
And we're not going to let you know what that is just yet, but we will let you know a few days ahead of time if you want to catch those films. It's a good one.
It is.
It's a really good one. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us. If you're going to miss us for these last couple of weeks, we'll probably have some short takes up on the YouTube channel, including Coming to Get You's, Top Fives, and or a Shudder with Me, which are usually lifted from these episodes. And if that's not enough, we are still covering Star Trek Season 2 over on Patreon. If you'd like to be Patreon, we would love it. For just $5 a month, you can get extra shows on the first 2 seasons of Star Trek and the first 2 seasons of The X-Files.
Yes, and we would certainly appreciate your support. Please.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you're watching us on YouTube today, please subscribe. You don't have to leave a message, but if you want to comment, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Mhm.
And I guess have a really great Turkey Day. There,
You
David.
too. See you after Turkey Day when we're, we're getting rid of all the tryptophan or whatever.
Yeah, there you go. And watch out for giant ants.
Keep the sugar off the table.
There you go.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.